kutaschit santrasta chitoranam eshamanaham devam virincham samgad vidhatas trahi atma yone yita tejasomam. And the translation for text 52. With a fearful heart, Durvasa Muni went here and there seeking shelter. But when he could find no shelter, he finally approached Lord Brahma and said, "O my Lord, O Lord Brahma, kindly protect me from the blazing Sudarshan chakra sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead." And now texts 53 and 54. So we'll be chanting text 53 together. Sri Brahmo Vacha Sana Mariam Saha Vishvametat Krida Vashane Dviparada Samne Brubanga Matrena Hi Sandidaksho Kalatmano Yasya Tiro Bhavisyati Shri Brahmo Vacha Sana Mariam Saha Vishvametat Kritavashane Dviparada Samne Brubanga Matrena Hi Sandidaksho Kalatmano Yasya Tiro Bhavisyati Shri Brahmo Vacha Sthana Madhyam Saha Vishvametat Kritavashane Dviparada Samne Brubanga Matrena Hi Sandidaksho Kalatmano Yasya Tiro Bhavisyati. Please chant. Shri Brahmo Vacha Sthana Madhyam Saha Vishvametat Go, myself. Do the second line. Krita Vasane Dviparadha Samne Brubanga Matrena Hi Sandidaksho Kalatmano Yasya Tiro Bhavishyati. Good. Shri Brahmo Vacha Sana Madhyam Saha Vishvametat Kritavasane Dviparadha Samne Brubanga Matrena Hi Sandidaksho Kalatmano Yasya Tiro Bhavishyati. Anybody from the ladies' side like to do it? Okay. Shri Brahmo Vacha Sthana Madhyam Saha Vishvametat Kridadvasane Dviparadha Samne Brubanga Matrena Hi Sandidaksho Kalatmano yasya tiro bhavishyati. And I'll also read the Sanskrit of text 54, which is part of the two texts were put together. So, aham bhavo daksha brigu pradanaha prajesa bhutesha suresha mukyaha sarve vayam yan niyan mam prapanna murtanirar pitam loka hitam bahama. So the word for word translation, at least for text 53. Yes. Okay. Shri Brahma Vacha. Lord Brahma said, Sthanam, the place where I am. Madhyam, my residence. Brahmaloka. Sorry, it was my residence, Brahmaloka, sorry. Saha, with Vishvam, the whole universe. Etat, this. Krita avasane, at the end of the period, for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dviparadha samnye, the time known as the end of a Dviparadha. Brubanga matrena, simply by the flicking of the eyebrows. He, indeed, Sandidaksho, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when he desires to burn the whole universe. Kala Atmanaha, of the form of destruction. Yasya, of whom Tiro Bhavisyati will be vanquished. So that was text 53. So I'll just read the translation. Lord Brahma said, at the end of the Dviparadha, when the pastimes of the Lord come to an end, Lord Vishnu, by a flick of his eyebrows, vanquishes the entire universe, including our places of residence. Such personalities as me and Lord Shiva, as well as Daksha, Brigu, and similar great saints, of which they are the head, and also the rulers of the living entities, the rulers of human society, and the rulers of the demigods, all of us surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, bowing our heads to carry out his orders for the benefit of all living entities. In the purport. In Bhagavad Gita 10.34, it is said, Mirchu sarva harash chaham, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead approaches as death, or the Supreme Controller of time, he takes everything away. In other words, all opulence, prestige, and everything we possess is given by the Supreme Lord for some purpose. It is the duty of the surrendered soul to execute the orders of the Supreme. No one can disregard him. Under the circumstances, Lord Brahma refused to give shelter to Durvasa Muni from the powerful Sudarshan chakra sent by the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapada Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gora Bhakta Vrindam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namaha. So, I'm going to look at the context of these verses. Now, Durvasa Muni had uprooted a bunch of hair from his head, and he created a demon. And that demon is described using the exact words given, resembling the blazing fire of devastation. Now, his purpose for doing so was to punish Maharaj Ambarish. And the fault of Maharaj Ambarish that Durvasa Muni saw was the following. And these are his words. You have invited me to eat as a guest, but instead of feeding me, you yourself have eaten first. So that's the fault that Durvasa Muni saw in Maharaj Ambarish, and so this was his response to that fault. Now, it's certainly an instruction for a civilized human being that a householder needs to follow, and that is, and this is actually coming from Narada Muni, and he's putting it very clearly. It's from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the 15th chapter. Muni says, when one gets the opportunity of a suitable, auspicious time and place, one should with love offer food prepared with ghee to the deity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then offer the prasad to a suitable person, a Vaishnava or Brahmana. So this is the instruction for any civilized human being, and the result of following this instruction is this will be the cause of everlasting prosperity. So we can see that this is something that Maharaj Ambarish had been engaged in, because the whole first part of this chapter is a description of his careful worship of his deity. Now, in this case, Maharaj Ambarish, his taking of water was to observe the breaking of fast within Dvadasi. And he had in fact consulted the learned Brahmanas, and he'd broken his fast with the water by drinking water. Now, Maharaj Ambarish had been very conscious of the necessity to make the correct choice. So he wanted to keep his invitation for offering prasad to a Brahmana intact. And in effect, his offering of prasad to Durvasa Muni, it remained intact, because when Durvasa Muni returned from performing his ritualistic ceremony, and it's described that that ritualistic ceremony was to take a bath in the Yamuna and to meditate on the impersonal Brahman. So that was what Durvasa Muni was doing. So when he returned after dipping into the Yamuna and meditating upon the impersonal Brahman, again, Maharaj Ambarish, he received Durvasa Muni very well, and he offered him all respects. And as a yogi, Durvasa Muni, he told Maharaj Ambarish, these are his words, now this is the context, and this is how Durvasa Muni responds to Maharaj Ambarish, having been received very well. He says, because of your misbehavior, I shall show you something to punish you. Now, Krishna explains that there's 8 primary mystic perfections, and there's 3 by which one has the ability to transform one's body. So the first one is anima, where one can transform one's body to become smaller than the smallest. So, one can fit into a keyhole even. And the second mystic perfection amongst the three of allowing one to transform one's body is that it's called mahima. One becomes greater than the greatest. And then there's lagima, which allows one to become lighter than the lightest. Now, carrying on with the 8 mystic perfections, so those were the 3 related to the transformation of one's body. There's also the one that's called perfection of prapti, where one can acquire whatever one wants. And then there's the 5th one, which is prakamya siddhi, where one can actually experience. So the first one is, you can acquire any object you want. So it's a mystic perfection. And then the next perfection, mystic perfection, prakamya siddhi, is that one can experience that enjoyable object, either in this world or in the next. So that's the perfection. That object can remain with one and one can hold it for enjoyment, both at that time and in another lifetime. And then there's Ishita siddhi, where one can manipulate the sub-potencies of Maya. And the last one is there's a controlling potency. So these are mystic perfections called Basita siddhi, where one isn't impeded by the 3 modes of material nature. So one is very free. Now, one who has acquired Kamavasayita siddhi, one can obtain anything to the highest possible limit, meaning like no matter what it is and in what quantity, one can get it. Now, this is what Krishna says about these 8 mystic perfections. He says, "My dear saintly Uddhava, these 8 mystic perfections are considered to be naturally existing and unexcelled within this material world." So this is Krishna talking about these mystic siddhis in the 11th canto and the 15th chapter. Now, one of these 8 mystic perfections, or this Ishita siddhi, whereby one can manipulate the sub-potencies of Maya, we can consider that one a little bit because it has relevance to Durvasa Muni and how he was functioning. This particular mystic power of being able to manipulate the sub-potencies of Maya is seen by how Durvasa Muni responded to Maharaj Ambarish. He actually used this perfection that he'd attained, this Ishita siddhi. So the purpose of Maya is always to create some illusion. So this particular mystic perfection allows one to actually work with the creation of illusion. And this is what Durvasa Muni did. He actually created a fiery demon. So it's utilizing what's called the sub-potency, so an element of Maya, and using it for his purpose. His purpose then was to have the demon start marching with a trident in his hand towards Maharaj Ambarish to create fear. It was a form of punishment. So now one of the things that's very important to know here is that one may have attained that mystic potency, this Asita siddhi, such as Durvasa Muni was displaying, but one cannot pass beyond the control of illusion. So still, Durvasa Muni, we see that he had this problem. He's manipulating Maya through this mystic perfection, but he's not actually able to go beyond illusion because we see he's displaying anger. So he's under illusion too, because he saw faults in Maharaj Ambarish having taken water. So clearly he was still under illusion, just by virtue of the fact that he was displaying this anger. Now, Srila Prabhupada looks to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to explain something of how this works, that somebody acquires a mystic perfection, but still they can remain under the control of Maya or illusion. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains that Krishna is actually the shelter of the 8 mystic perfections that were described, and or these mystic potencies, these abilities, and these meditations, because there's meditation that goes along with the acquisition of the mystic potencies. And it's for this reason that those perfections, they actually are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from his personal potency. So that's the source of these mystic potencies. So what this allows one to infer is that such perfections are fully developed only within Krishna himself and his personal associates, because those associates are intimately connected with Krishna. So therefore, those mystic potencies in their fullness are coming from Krishna, and the devotees that are intimately connected with him have them automatically. Now, so we see in Durvasa Muni's case, he was meditating on the impersonal Brahman, and he's manipulating illusion, but he's still under the control of illusion. And to illustrate how it is that these mystic perfections are fully within Krishna, one just has to consider that, for example, that Krishna is so small that he can enter into all the atomic particles, and he can become so large as Mahavishnu that he can just breathe out millions of universes. And he also can become so light and subtle that even mystic yogis cannot perceive him. Like, for instance, there's mention earlier on in the text that Maharaj Ambarish was meditating on the super soul. So he was fully conscious of Krishna as super soul, and it's not that Durvasa Muni was perceiving Krishna in that very subtle form. He was not able to perceive that. And also the other mystic potency of Krishna, having this mystic perfection of the acquisitive power, being able to get whatever he wants, it's seen that it's so great that he's actually able to keep the entire existence within his body. So this is just to point out or illustrate this particular point, that all these mystic potencies, they're present in their full form within Krishna. Now, by implication, there's just having contrasted a little bit of what Durvasa Muni's position is and Krishna's position is, and not saying that Durvasa Muni is a materialistic person, but generally materialistic persons, they mechanically can acquire these potencies or these perfections, but they've been awarded by Maya or illusion. And this perfection, it's an expansion of the Lord's inferior potency. So it's on a different level. Now, in text 48, which we read today, oh no, actually it was yesterday, there's the destruction of this illusory demoniac being burned to ashes by the Lord's Sudarshan disc. So, and it's being compared, there's a burning of an angry snake by a forest fire. So a snake may be very angry, but when a forest fire comes, it just engulfs that snake with its anger. So in a similar way, there was anger on the part of Durvasa Muni, and he manipulated Maya to create that fiery demon. But that demon was just burnt to ashes by the huge force of the fire of the Sudarshan disc coming from Lord Krishna. So now a mystic yogi, such as Durvasa Muni, he attempts to utilize that perfection that's been awarded to him. And what was definitely illustrated, at least yesterday what we read, is that mystic perfection actually becomes insignificant in terms of it just being a very small expansion of the mystic potency of Lord Krishna. Because Krishna is the Lord of all mystic potencies. Now, Durvasa Muni, he comes to experience that mystic potency of Lord Krishna's disc because it's almost touching his back, and these are the verses we were reading today, because it's got a scorching nature. So the disc was so hot that it burned to ashes a fiery demon composed of fire. So that same disc is right by Durvasa Muni's back. So it's actually got a scorching heat. So it causes him to run very swiftly. I mean, we know that, like, just simply say touching, if one's cooking and one touches a hot pot or the hot stove, one immediately jumps back. So it's a similar thing. He's actually feeling the heat behind him, so it's propelling him forward. So he's moving very swiftly. And so Srila Prabhupada states, and this is a comment from Srila Prabhupada, which has relevance to this discussion. He said, one is allowed to exhibit mystic control only within the confines of the laws of God. And even a great yogi who transgresses the laws of God by his so-called mystic opulence will be severely punished, as comes to be seen here in the case of Durvasa Muni. So this is Srila Prabhupada's comment on this kind of situation that we've seen here of a mystic yogi utilizing his mystic opulence. Now, Durvasa Muni, he makes an attempt to protect himself, which is natural. I mean, if we have touched that extremely hot object, then we may actually find that the skin will very shortly blister or something, so we have to find something to cool it, aloe vera or something. So Durvasa Muni, he's experiencing the scorching heat on his back from the Sudarshan chakra, and he attempts to protect himself by fleeing to different places, and he goes in all directions, so it's pretty desperate. And it says he goes into the sky, he goes on the surface of the earth, he goes into caves, he goes into the ocean, on different planets of the rulers of the three worlds, and even on the heavenly planets. But wherever he goes, immediately following him is the unbearable fire of the Sudarshan disc. Now, this Durvasa Muni going into different places like the celestial realm, caves, oceans, it's another secondary mystic perfection, this ability to take the body wherever the mind goes. So if one's in a situation where one is uncomfortable, I mean, one may find this oneself too. One's doing something particularly dull, but one's mind can travel to a completely different place. So let's say one's engaged in some activity, but one's mind is, somewhere on a beach with soft sand and waves lapping on the shore, so one's mind can take one to a different place. So same thing here. And Durvasa Muni had that mystic perfection that actually his body could go where the mind goes. So generally, our body remains in one place, but the mind travels to a different place. But this mystic perfection allows for where the mind travels, the body goes too. So that's why we find Durvasa Muni is able to go into the celestial realm. He's able to go next minute to the ocean, to some caves. He's able to go to the rulers of the different planets. So wherever his mind goes, the body follows. It's a mystic perfection, a secondary mystic perfection. Now, this is obviously a reaction that Durvasa Muni is suffering, and it stands in sharp contrast with his own foiled attempt to bring suffering to Maharaj Ambarish. Because Maharaj Ambarish, if we were to contrast the position of Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish had attained a different kind of perfection. And his perfection was of being self-controlled and unattached and being able to disregard any material enjoyment. So these are these are perfections that were specific to a person being completely Krishna conscious, as was Maharaj Ambarish. And if we recall, when he was confronted with this demon, obviously creating a huge amount of noise because he was striding and he was a massive demon and there was heat from the blazing fire, he didn't blink an eye. He was completely undisturbed, didn't move, stayed in his same spot. So you can see he has the perfection of being self-controlled, and he wasn't attached. He accepted, what was to occur would occur. He was not disturbed in the least. And there's a description that Maharaj Ambarish was always satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his constitutional activities. And just by doing so, he was gradually able to give up all material desires. And this was possible by his activities, which brought him to that position of serving the Supreme Lord in devotion. And the particular regulated activities, just like we heard, Durvasa Muni had a regulated ritualistic activity: bathe in the Yamuna, meditate on the impersonal Brahman. Maharaj Ambarish, his regulated activities were decorating his deity, cleansing his temple, bringing water from the Ganges and Yamuna to the deity, continuing his regular work of ruling as a king, performing artik many times, preparing excellent food for the deity, preparing dresses for the deity. So the result of attaining these perfections on the part of Maharaj Ambarish is given by Lord Krishna, and this is Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in 1849. Asakta buddhit sarvatra chitatma vigata spriha naishkarma siddhim paranam samyashena dignak gachati. One who is self-controlled and unattached, and who disregards all material enjoyments, can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. So this is the key. So Maharaj Ambarish, in contrast to Durvasa Muni, he had attained a state of mind which is called Yoga Rudha. It's the perfectional stage of yoga. And that perfectional stage is characterized by being completely satisfied within oneself. And there's no fear of any kind of reaction from one's actions. So that's why Maharaj Ambarish, he had performed his action after careful deliberation of how he should manage this conflict of having offered a guest prasad but then also needing to break his own fast. And then the careful deliberation was, okay, sip some water. So he had no fear from any kind of reaction, by virtue of the fact, and this is Krishna's description, he had attained these perfections of being completely self-controlled, unattached, and not disregarding any material enjoyment. So having that kind of perfection in contrast to Durvasa Muni, put him in a position of being completely renounced and therefore free from any kind of reaction because of actions he performed. So Durvasa Muni, on the other hand, his heart was fearful because he came to Lord Brahma, and this is what we read today. And he says, "Oh, my Lord, kindly protect me from the blazing Sudarshan chakra sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead." So he's experiencing a reaction. His heart is fearful. He's looking for some sort of shelter from a greater personality. He's traveled to the heavenly realms. He's in front of Lord Brahma. And Srila Prabhupada, we were reading in the purport today, he states that Lord Brahma refused to give him shelter. So, so the shelter that Durvasa Muni was looking for was, to not have the Sudarshan disc pursuing him and feeling that scorching heat from the Sudarshan disc. But Lord Brahma gave a reason for why he would not actually give that kind of shelter to Durvasa Muni. And the reason he gives is that all one's opulence, all one's prestige, and all that we possess is actually given by the Supreme Lord, and it's given for a reason. One is acknowledging the Supreme Lord, so one understands the source of anything that one has, and one's attempting to surrender to him by carrying out his orders. So we're understanding that Durvasa Muni was not acknowledging the source of his mystic perfections. So Lord Brahma was specifically drawing his attention to the source of anything that one has. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he's actually writing that no one can disregard the Supreme Lord. So one may not acknowledge him, but you can't disregard him because there's reaction that comes. And this is what Durvasa Muni is experiencing, severe reaction. And Lord Brahma, in this verse today, he's actually pointing to a particular mystic perfection, because you need to, at times, speak to somebody to help them to understand something according to the frame of mind that the person is holding. So Lord Brahma does that. He points to a mystic perfection of Lord Vishnu, and that mystic perfection is Kamavasayita Siddhi, or being able to obtain anything from anywhere. Because what does he do? He points out that the Lord just flicks his eyebrows and immediately he can vanquish the entire universe. So he's letting Durvasa Muni know, your mystic perfections are these. The source of those mystic perfections is Lord Vishnu. And see this particular mystic perfection of Lord Vishnu. He has that ability to vanquish the entire universe, can enter into him. So by pointing out this mystic perfection of the Supreme Lord, then Lord Brahma, he really drums the point in. It's subtly done, but it's drummed into Durvasa Muni so he understands. He tells him, there's many personalities, and he lists the personalities. He says, myself, Lord Shiva, all the rulers of human society, all the rulers of the heavenly planets, all of us at that time when the Lord displays this mystic perfection, this Kamavasahita siddhi of taking in the entire universe into his body, all of us bow down to the Lord to carry out his orders. Because we understand that it's actually for the benefit of all living beings. So this is Lord Brahma's response to Durvasa Muni looking for help to stop the scorching heat of the Sudarshan chakra coming from Lord Krishna. So he also lists other sages. He lists Daksha, Bhrigu, and he points out, and they're the rulers of all the other saintly persons. And so we can understand by inference if Durvasa Muni is actually thinking, I don't know, in that particular situation with the Sudarshan disc on his back, I would imagine the thinking is heightened, because when there's danger, one has to think very sharply. So he's actually, if he's hearing that the rulers or the great saintly personalities that are the heads of all other saintly personalities, that they're also bowing down to the Supreme Lord, he could infer that Maharaj Ambarish is included in that category of saintly persons. And now, for Durvasa Muni, everything, all these mystic perfections that had been bestowed upon him by the Supreme Lord were now going to be taken away from him by the desire of the Supreme Lord in the form of devouring death. As Krishna refers to himself, we find that, and this is the verse that Srila Prabhupada quoted here, 1034. Krishna refers to himself as devouring death. So Durvasa Muni's opulences were going to be taken away by Krishna in the form of devouring death by Sudarshan chakra. So those are some thoughts on this particular little section that we read today. If there's any thought to expand the discussion or some question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, Mataji. It was very jam-packed with a short amount of time. I think I have two questions. The first question is, if Durvasa Muni went to Vaikuntha to approach the Lord directly, why did he have to come back, or did he come back? Like, if he was already in Vaikuntha, like, what was he not allowed? Like, if you know.
So the question being asked is, if Durvasa Muni actually went directly to Vaikuntha, to Lord Vishnu, why did he actually have to return? Was it that he was not allowed to remain in Vaikuntha? So that's a little bit ahead, where he goes to visit Lord Vishnu. But taking into account what Durvasa Muni is doing, he's in a dangerous situation, so his mind is jumping to where all the different great personalities are. So his mind jumped to Lord Brahma. The mystic perfection he has is that the body goes to where the mind goes. So instantly he's transported in front of Lord Brahma. The same thing happened. The mystic perfection allowed him to go to Vaikuntha, to Lord Vishnu, but the difficulty with Durvasa Muni is that his mystic perfections, as I'm understanding this, because he's not making the connection with the source of the mystic perfections, meaning Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, then he's barred from that intimate association. And why we also know that he's not making that intimate connection, apart from the statement that he was meditating on the impersonal Brahman, is that he didn't give proper respect to a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. So he is advised, we'll come to that, he's advised by Lord Vishnu to return and specifically put things right with Maharaj Ambarish, the devotee that he defended, the devotee of Lord Vishnu. And indeed, that's a very appropriate behavior, and it's very personal behavior, which an impersonalist may not have. That if you offend a particular person, you go directly to that person, and you clear the heart of the pain caused, if there's pain that was caused. And so that is based on the response of Lord Vishnu: return to my devotee, and set that in order.
Okay. My next question, thank you. My next question is, you mentioned the 8 mystic cities. I was just wondering, we hear a lot, we shouldn't desire those in Krishna consciousness. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate why one practicing Krishna consciousness shouldn't desire mystic perfection.
Well, the question that's been asked is if the mystic perfections, the 8 mystic perfections, or the primary mystic perfections that were spoken about, should be something that one doesn't desire in Krishna consciousness. Why should one not desire them? The perfection that comes to a person practicing Krishna consciousness, which was the case of illustrated so graphically here, is that of becoming self-controlled, and of becoming unattached, and coming to a position of being pretty renounced, because one doesn't get pulled by the idea of material enjoyment. And that position is one that includes all those mystic perfections, and devotees in that position possess those mystic perfections. So they don't endeavor for those mystic perfections because they're included. The connection with the Supreme Lord, who's the source of those mystic perfections, allows for those mystic perfections to also be possessed by the devotees. But the devotees' emphasis is on serving the Lord and surrendering. And this is the most difficult part of Bhakti Yoga. One is learning to surrender to the Supreme Lord. So while one is desiring something like something material or something subtle, like a mystic perfection, one is not necessarily in a humble state of mind of seeing oneself as completely dependent on the Supreme Lord. So it's the more difficult thing to go to a position of desiring only in relation to the Supreme Lord, not for oneself. But that is what the bhakti process is doing. One is actually putting oneself in a secondary position. The Lord is in the primary position. And the extraordinary byproduct of it is the freedom from reaction, so the suffering that falls away. So the mystic perfections are naturally there. There's no suffering, reaction suffering. And there's the loving relationship. So in all respects, one has everything. No necessity to desire. It's automatically there.
Try. Thank you.
So, very nice explanation, Krsna Arcana. Thank you very much, Mother Krsna Arcana, for an excellent class.
Thank you for your
the only question that I can come up with is, can I gain mystic potencies by chanting Hare Krishna?
Okay, here's what would be the word? The perfect question. The question being asked by Sarvapam Prabhu is, can I obtain mystic, or can I obtain mystic perfection by chanting Hare Krishna? So I guess the response is very similar to previous question. The chanting of the Maha Mantra is, it's called the Great Chant of Deliverance. And what one is being delivered from is all the reactions for previous sinful activity, and one is protected from performing any sinful activity. So it puts one in a very safe position. So mystic perfection, on the other hand, if it does not have the connection with the Supreme Lord, remains on within the Lord's inferior energy. So, which was the case with Devasa Muni. There was, at least as I'm understanding, the devotee who's chanting the Maha Mantra is under the protection of the superior potency of the Supreme Lord. So, being under the protection of the superior potency of the Lord allows for the development of mystic potencies that are within the superior energy of the Lord. And they're naturally there, which is what Krishna explained. He said that they naturally exist. So those particular mystic abilities in a person completely purified, completely unattached to anything material, it's naturally there, and the chanting of the Maha Mantra brings that, definitely, but one is not particularly interested in those mystic potencies because the great happiness is there merely in serving the Supreme Lord. So one reads sometimes that a devotee makes use of mystic potencies, but it's not a regular thing. Like, for instance, when I was looking at these verses, I remembered Lord Shiva, or Lord Shiva. He at one point also used that mystic potency of the mind carrying the body somewhere, or rather his mind is synchronized, I should say, completely with, it's purified, it's not exactly on the level of Devasa Muni, but he used a mystic potency because he also went all over the place when he was being pursued by Vitrasura. So a devotee may utilize a mystic potency, which is naturally there, but it's not the emphasis. So the chanting of the Maha Mantra can bring those mystic potencies, yes. And a completely pure devotee, not having any material attachments, such as Maharaj Ambarish, that's there. But it's not used generally, those mystic potencies, by a devotee, because there's always the consciousness of the source of those mystic potencies. So rather one relies on the personality who possesses those potencies in full. So where it's needed, one lotus feet of the Lord, who's the source of the mystic potencies, and one asks him for shelter in a dangerous situation rather than trying to assert one's own, the mystic potencies that have been bestowed by the Lord. So those are an attempt at a response, Sarvabhauma Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you for your kind question.
Thanks for the class, Mataji. You said that Maya can give a person mystic powers. How is that?
Well, the mystic powers. The mystic powers for a person who has a conception, an impersonal conception of the Supreme Lord, that person may not be free from material desires, so which keeps a person still on the material plane. So, but it's the Lord's inferior spiritual energy, which is Maya. So the person is in that space rather than in the internal potency of the Lord, protected by the internal potency of the Lord. It's because of not having the personal connection with the Lord, not holding the concept of the Lord as a person and as the source of everything. So the mystic perfection for one who's meditating on the Lord in an impersonal form, it's within the inferior energy of the Lord, which is Maya. So the mystic perfection comes because the person has fixed their mind as concentrating on the Lord, but in an impersonal form. So because the connection isn't with the personal form of Lord, then that person's mystic perfection is in relation to being able to manipulate some of the material potency, some of Maya. So this was Dravasa Muni, manipulating the fire element and creating a demon. So it remains on a certain level. It's not on a transcendental level in connection with the Supreme Lord, under the protection of his his superior potency. So different. It has to do with the concept one's holding. Ananta, you had something?
Haribol Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam. First off, I think to address Sarvo's question, would we have to define mysticism? Because to me, that's a broad field. I don't quite understand what he meant by the question itself.
Okay, so Ananta is looking at what is the definition of mysticism, so that he can understand Sarvapama's question of whether the chanting of the Maha Mantra brings some kind of mystic ability. Well, I don't have the dictionary right in front of me, Ananta, but it would certainly refer to some ability that's outside of material ability and ability of the body.